Godless engineer, you said you wanted to talk. My big issue with your video series, Did Jesus Exist, is that you only look at books and materials that would support your side of the argument, never once looking at the other side.
Alright, let's do this shit.
Engineer, a conscious pioneer, a logic general, a reason brigadier. More bullshit from the pulpit. Meet me in the comment section and you get schooled, bitch. The godless engineer.
Okay, for those of you that don't know, I have a series on my channel called Did Jesus Exist? Now, this series is supposed to be like a much longer thing, and I've got a few more episodes written, and I need to record them. So, you know, it's not a complete series. I don't present all of the arguments against the existence of Jesus, but I do present some pretty damn good reasons that you should doubt his existence. If you're interested to see what his problems are and, you know, what he's actually talking about, I suggest going and watching those videos if you want to. And tell me what you think. Let's hear your opinion. If you agree with his opinion in this video, let me know. We'll see how it goes. Alright, so continue.
This reminds me of the creationists who will only read something or read something or look at information that supports their already formulated opinion. Okay.
Fair enough for you to think that. That's actually not how I started down this path. Apparently you don't know, but I grew up as a Catholic, and then I moved into more of a Southern Baptist kind of leaning, and then a more non-denominational before I finally exited religion and came to my present glorious state of being an atheist. So, for you to presume that I started off with the idea that he doesn't exist and then I found information and made it fit is totally disingenuous, and just goes to show that you have your own preconceptions and you're making me and my journey to mythicism fit into what you want it to be, which I find pretty fucking funny myself. Now, in case you're wondering, you know, like stated before, I started off believing in a historical Jesus. I did. And I went and I investigated the evidence. And you know what I found? That there was no evidence, actually, for the existence of Jesus. And there was mountains of evidence against his existence. There are multiple things that kind of key you into the idea that, you know, Jesus, like the profile that we associate to Jesus, is not, it doesn't exist as a historical person. Now, the argument against Jesus' historicity comes in kind of two flavors. One is from a Christian point of view of historicity, and the other one's from a more secular point of view, a more obscure point of view. That one is actually a little bit harder to argue. That's why I chose to start with the Christian worldview of, you know, using the Bible as a historical document, because there are people out there that use it like that. And, you know, to be honest, Rise, just because you don't subscribe to that doesn't mean that those arguments aren't used, or that a substantial number of people out there don't use them. And I find it extremely hilarious that you come on to my videos and, you know, just because I don't produce a 2-hour video debunking, you know, the historicity of Jesus, that, you know, apparently I don't know what I'm talking about, and I'm making reality fit into my own preconceptions. Kind of like what you're doing.
Not, you know, cracking open the origin of species or well, even something more modern and going through it with an open mind. Even when they do go through such things, they go and nitpick. With me, how do you learn about something? Or you start from zero. You act as if you have no knowledge at all, and you read 3 to 5 books presenting one side of the argument, and then you do the same with the opposite side of the argument.
Okay, yet again, you're assuming that I didn't do that. You're assuming that because I didn't take you through my entire thought process in just a few short videos, that, I immediately came to this conclusion that Jesus doesn't exist, and that, I hopped on a bandwagon, basically. And that's just simply not what I did. I did believe in a historical Jesus, but then when I went and looked for the evidence for a historical Jesus, it just simply wasn't there. Now, sometimes, an absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence, but it is evidence of absence if there's a lot of reason to believe that there should be evidence. And for somebody like Jesus, even if you want to go with the harder secular kind of worldview about it, that there was one single man back then that had some pretty good ideas and started a whole movement. The fact that we have lesser failed prophets that were recorded by contemporary historians of the time, the fact that there was that is a pretty big indication that maybe this guy didn't fucking walk around and, do anything, because he didn't exist. Another pretty good damn indication that he possibly didn't exist, or that there was no information on him at all in the first century, is the pure fact that many scholars had to make up shit about Jesus, had to make up letters, had to make up, they had to forge writings by contemporary historians in order to validate it in the Middle Ages, for people that questioned it. There was even a sect of people in the first century that believed that Jesus was a metaphorical figure, and that, they were well-constructed myths, and that is what people believed in. That is why 2 Peter was written and forged in Paul's name, because, they wanted to produce a letter written directly to Jesus or concerning Jesus. And so they wanted that quote-unquote historical account. So, you know what? They made one up.
You already decided Jesus didn't exist.
I didn't already decide that Jesus didn't exist. Goddamn.
And then through your videos, I could see that the mythicist thing really fell apart, because there's, again, it's just very simple. Why have a Messiah or forge a person who the earliest documents doesn't call himself the Son of God or the Messiah? His family thinks he's crazy. It has a lot of embarrassing stuff in there. He was nobody. As for miracle workers and people who cast out demons, there were a dime a dozen. This is even recorded in the earliest Gospels.
Okay. So let me get this straight. Again, I've preconceived that, Jesus didn't exist, and so I've made it fit into my worldview, and I've found sources that support me, just like a fundy Christian. But yet, when you actually go to try to explain your simple evidence for Jesus, you fucking can't spit it out at all. Like, you're stumbling over your words. you don't have a thought to actually express about it, because you know why? There's no good arguments for the historical Jesus. Now you say things like, well, he didn't call himself the Messiah in the earliest documents and whatnot, and all of that shit. Well, I mean, I would like you actually to reference these, well, at least when we speak in the discussion. I would like you to reference, where you're finding these things, like which version of the gospel are you looking at here, which I think is pretty fucking hilarious that we have versions of this gospel in the first place. But as far as the gospels go, with the earliest gospels and everything like that, there's actually a really good book out there I'd suggest that you read. Take some of your own advice and read a book that is written by somebody who believes in a historical Jesus, but yet thinks that the Gospels are just mega parables, And so, what it's called The Power of Parable. I suggest you go and read it. It's a really great read. He makes a really good and solid case that all of them are not historical at all, like the canonical Gospels, and that they are actually just parables that are used to teach people. And that's just another nail in the coffin for the historicity of Jesus. You say that, it was really common for these miracle workers to go around, and that we even have records of those miracle workers, but yet we don't have records of the supposed greatest man on earth? I mean, come on, dude. You act like it's such a far-fetched thing for somebody to make up shit. Have you never heard of Scientology before? They have made up an entire trillions of years past in order to support their beliefs. They actually go against the one thing that is helping me right now, and that's antidepressants, because you got little ghosties inside you that are making you all frowny-faced. And then you got fucking Mormons. They believe in a guy who was arrested for using seer stones to find people's lost treasure. He was arrested and tried, and he even confessed to being a liar and a cheat. And, he served time for it. And then, lo and behold, magically, he takes a walk in the goddamn forest, and he sees fucking Jesus floating down off of the heavens, and all of a sudden, he creates a new fucking religion based on Christianity. None of it fucking happened. He was in the business of faith. That's where he came from. That was his upbringing. And so he just made a good business decision at the time, because faiths were going around just like businesses are now, which is kind of weird because they're just like businesses now.
As you point out, the virgin birth comes very late. These different writings within the New Testament have different theologies that are fighting against each other. In one comment you said, yeah, it's strange how all 27 books of the Bible all tell the same story, and then you backtrack that on other videos saying that they clash. The idea...
Alright. I'm prone to mistakes. I accept that. So if you would kindly point out what video I commented on where I said all 27 books of the Bible say the exact same goddamn thing, but then later on say that, they don't say all the same goddamn thing, and they actually clash. Now, I admit that I could be wrong. I'm fucking human. I'm just a person, so I could be wrong, or I could have changed my opinion and I didn't correct myself. I admit these things. But, you're making the claim that I did this, so I'd like you to kind of provide the evidence for it, Now, as far as the canonical Gospels go, they are vastly different while telling the same basic skeleton story of Jesus Christ. Both of them, you can find common elements in them, but each one builds upon the other. There's this popular idea of this Q source that both Luke and Matthew pull from. But I subscribe to the idea that Luke copied off of Matthew and Mark and built his own story, and then Matthew, built upon Mark's story, each one getting progressively more magical, And are there contradictions in it? Of course there are contradictions. Of course they clash. There are multiple places where they clash, even in theology. So with me saying that they tell the same story or something like that, I still don't say that I'm wrong, because they do kind of still say the same story, but I mean, it's when you drill down into the details of the theology of it that you start finding holes and gaps and places where they clash and overlap and they disagree. And, you can do all that while maintaining the same basic idea,
That you'd build a figure around, especially a Jewish one, who got crucified, a Jew to be crucified under Judaism, under their most sacred scripture, the Torah. For a Jew to be crucified means God hates him. He is cursed. Cursed is the man who hangs on the tree. It means he deserved it. He was not in favor with God. But yet...
Okay, so let me get this straight. God plans on sending himself down as his son in order to die on the cross. And then get taken up into heaven, and he makes his pass through hell in order to get all them souls up there that didn't get a chance to repent before. And he does all that, but yet he's not in God's favor? How can God not be in God's favor? That doesn't make sense at all. Not in the theology of Christianity, not even in a secular idea, because a secular idea of a Jesus wouldn't include God having a favor, because God wouldn't exist.
This type of man, the mythicists, they built this up, even though you could see things gradually getting added as the Gospels of their later date Gospels try to fix these things, gloss over them, or edit them out completely. No, Jesus Christ was absolutely a historical figure who was crucified under Pontius Pilate. And
Jesus Christ was absolutely crucified under Pontius Pilate. Okay? It was absolutely. Even though there's no records, the entire demeanor of Pontius portrayed in the Bible is completely fallacious. It wouldn't have happened that way. If Jesus was tried by the elders, they wouldn't have asked for crucifixion. They would have asked for stoning, because that was the punishment, as determined by their religion. He would have been stoned. He wouldn't have been, nailed and hung on a cross. And not to mention the fact that, when it supposedly happened on a Good Friday. And even if you just stick with canonical and you forget the fuck out of John, because John has him dying on a completely separate day, like 3 years down the road. Even if you just stick with the canonical Gospels, it doesn't make sense that Jesus would have been killed on that particular day. Because, they wouldn't have had a trial by night. They would have done things properly if they were really looking. Because, they're obviously doing this because he is blaspheming God. Why would they themselves blaspheme, their religion, or blaspheme God by stepping outside of their religion and doing things that God hasn't directed them to do? God hasn't laid down these laws for them to do. Like, not hold an illegal trial overnight just before Passover.
I think you know this. But it just disgusts me that, like some fundamentalist blind faith Christian, you refuse to look at the other side, and you only use sources and present books that will back up your case, which you want to be true or you need to be true, or else your series falls apart. That's the issue that I have with you.
No. I've taken a pretty hard look at the historicity of Jesus, and I've come to the conclusion that he probably didn't exist. All we can say is probably, because I subscribe to Richard Carrier's method for proving history. That's using Bayes' theorem to determine a probability as to whether or not something is true. Now, basically, just to put Bayes' theorem in layman's terms, you take the chance of it actually being, you know, a true statement, and you divide it by the sum of the probabilities of it being true and it being false. That way you get, you know, the whole, you know, all of it on the bottom and then part of it on the top, and that's basic math. That's fractions, okay? So basically what you end up with is a probability that you know, Jesus existed. And I feel that it's on the very, very low end of the spectrum that he existed. So that's why I say he probably didn't exist. I say, no, he didn't exist because I don't believe he existed. That's a belief claim. My knowledge claim is that he probably didn't exist. So I'm kind of, I guess I have to be agnostic on the idea that whether or not he existed. I think anything regarding him has to be taken as an agnostic position because you know, there's no way to indefinitely know whether or not he existed. So it has to be agnostic. But it's whether or not you believe that he existed or not. And I just simply don't believe that he existed, but I believe he didn't exist because I have looked at the evidence. I have looked at the arguments. You act like I haven't watched like hours upon hours upon hours upon hours upon hours upon hours of debates where one side is anti-Jesus and the other side is pro-Jesus historicity. I've heard both arguments. I've researched both arguments. And yes, for my series, I do use books that support my arguments. You know why I do that? They're called fucking references. So that you know that I'm not just getting on camera and spouting my shitty opinions. I have facts to back it up. Like the fact that Josephus was forged. The first reference in Josephus was forged. The second reference in Josephus isn't even the Jesus that we know because Jesus was a fucking common name back then. The second one was just a footnote that accidentally got merged in with the original text. So don't sit there and act like I don't know my shit. Don't sit there and act like I don't know what I'm talking about because I do. I've researched this heavily. And, I mean, my position was I don't know whether or not Jesus existed. Right now, I believe that he existed. And then after researching it, I came to the, well, I still don't know for certain, but I don't believe he existed.
I'd love to have a dialogue with you. Again, I believe Jesus was from Nazareth, born of two parents, human parents. Never claimed to be the Messiah, was an apocalyptic preacher. His family thought he was crazy. Not very popular. And then, well, you also approach it as if, you know, miracles do exist. Like, you'll bring up miracles and things like that and say, well, why isn't there any record of these? Well, because they were, yeah, I mean, like how many godmen there are in India, or witches and sorcerers there are in Haiti. Historians don't discount that, either as symbolic or just a thing of the time. And
you realize that just because you don't subscribe to that idea, or that you have the knowledge that, you know, miracles don't in fact exist, that doesn't mean that other people don't use those, right? I mean, you realize that YouTube is an international website, right? I mean, I'm not alone in this, am I? I'm not alone, am I? No? Everybody else knows this pretty much? It's just this guy? Okay.
you look for what is actually historical in these writings. But yet it's weird. You look at it as a devotional thing, but then only rely on these books written by pseudo scholars. I mean, that's probably a compliment for them.
Pseudo scholars? Really? I don't think that Richard Carrier. Wait, let me correct myself. Dr. Richard Carrier is a pseudo scholar. I do believe the fact that he actually put forth the effort to go and get his doctorate and be an actual historian is a pretty good indication that he's not a pseudo scholar. I would like to know which of the authors that I presented are actually pseudo scholars. Now, most of my first videos were either Bart Ehrman, David Fitzgerald, or Dr. Richard Carrier. Now, which of those three would you consider pseudo scholars? Please tell me which of those three. You've got two doctors, and you have David Fitzgerald, who is a historian. He may not have his doctorate, but he is a historian. You don't have to have a doctorate in order to be a historian, but they're all historians. They're not just like fake ass people on a WordPress blog that's writing shit down. They've all produced books. They're not pseudo scholars. I think that it's pretty disingenuous of you to refer to them as pseudo fucking scholars.
Only to back up the position that you came to, not through studying, because a lot of the stuff you present for the first time, or you find out for the first time and then you mention it. But you didn't start from zero. Even if you know something about a historical topic, you, as somebody critical or skeptical, you trying to force yourself to come down to zero and look at something with an open mind and then reread it to see, well, could this fit? And then you reread it and then go after it. And then maybe do that a few more times with each piece of writing or book. But you've attached yourself to one book, maybe a few more, and then that were already backing up the opinion that or belief that you wanted, and then ran with it. So, alright, there it is. Peace to you, and I'd love to talk to you.
Generally, it's not a very good idea for you to just continuously repeat yourself in a video. You need to state it once and then, move on from it. You don't need to repeat yourself. So, basically, you presented a conclusion here where you repeated everything that you spent the last 5 minutes explaining to me, and you put it in a 2-minute section. Thank you, I guess. Still, in your conclusion, you assume that I haven't done the research. You assume that I've only read a few books, or not just a few books, but one, maybe a couple more. And I have read them in order to go ahead and make them fit into my own preconceptions. I love how you go ahead and you make my mind up for me. God, I have to say, it is just so great to not have to worry about thinking. Tomorrow, I'm going to make sure as soon as I get up, I'm going to message you and be like, yo, dude, what do I need to do first? Should I shower? Should I masturbate? I just don't know. I'm so lost without you telling me exactly how I need to think and how I think throughout the entire fucking day. But in all seriousness, joking aside, peace be with you too, I guess. I don't normally say that, but, same back at you. Hope you have a good night, day, weekend, whatever. If you're watching this and you liked my short rebuttals to his claims in his video, hit the like button down below. If you're not subscribed to me already, go ahead and hit that fucking subscribe button, because you're going to miss out on some cool ass shit. I post daily. On the weekends, I do game streams. Here lately, I've been doing a lot of game streams at night. That's not going to be so regular. So, go ahead, and hit subscribe to get more great content from me. Even if you disagree with me, I hope that you I hope you subscribe to me and you can argue with me, because that's really what I'm out there to do, is argue with people and present my side of the arguments, and either I'll learn from it or I won't, and I'll just figure out new rebuttals to, other arguments. So I do want you to state your opinions. I don't want to silence you. I'm definitely not going to sit there and say, hey, you don't need to call yourself an atheist, okay?